Leanne, and I'm part of the Vancouver Startup Week team. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land, regardless of where you're joining us from. At my home here in Vancouver, I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to our session, Using Your Business for Good, What is a B Corporation and How to Become One, hosted by Neon. This session is part of the VSW Founder Track and is proudly supported by Sage Accounting. Sage knows that you didn't start up your business to become an accountant. Sage Accounting keeps your business organized and running smoothly by helping you track your cash flow, send out invoices, and get paid quickly. Visit the Sage Accounting booth to access free guides and templates for starting your business finances the right way. Plus, get an exclusive VSW discount if you're ready to finally switch from Excel. During the session, please be sure to post your questions for both of our speakers in the Q&A portion of the Whova session, and we will ask them during our Q&A portion of the session. Upvote the questions that you want to see that make sure we get them asked. And without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone over to our speakers, Natasha and Jessica. Over to you, and we'll begin the session.
Excellent. I will start sharing. Let's hope this works. Oh, good.
Thank you, Leanne, for that great intro.
Yes, thank you. All right. We are good. Okay, so as Leanne mentioned, we are here to talk about using your business for good. What is a B Corporation and how to become one? So I will note, if there is anyone on the call, this is definitely high-level intro. So if you're familiar with B Corps, B Corporation, if you're becoming one, some of this may be repetitive, but this is essentially a primer, and we can answer any in-depth questions as we go through. So quickly, Leanne beat us to it, but we also do like to take time to acknowledge that we are on the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And this is just an opportunity to reflect on the impacts of colonialism and thanking for the peoples who are still caring for and living on these lands and allowing us to play and work here as well. So what we'll be going through, Natasha and I will introduce ourselves. We'll talk a little bit about, you may be wondering who is Neon, if you're not familiar with us. We'll talk about the B Corp movement. What is it? What's it about? Who can become one? Why become one? How to become one? And along as also sharing our learnings along our journey becoming a B Corporation. And then we'll save space for questions and discussion as well. I'll also note that we have some prompts throughout the session. We'd like to try to keep it as interactive as possible, but also no pressure. We're rolling into the end of Friday, so all good. We can always follow up with questions later. All right, so who are we? I'm Jessica Turner. I'm a senior project strategist at Neon. I started my journey in the Vancouver startup world 11 years-ish ago. So I moved around as a generalist marketer, and then roughly 5 years ago, found myself on the services side as a product strategist and loving it ever since. So talking about impact and how I got here and how I kind of started to think about this, it really started in my personal life, thinking about what products I was using, my own personal impact. And then that quickly navigated to, okay, having worked on many products, it felt like something was missing. That something being a little bit of purpose and meaning, and why are we actually building these things? And not saying that every product is built for the sake of being a product, but how can it give back more? Digital products are starting to take over our land. There's a digital graveyard of them as well, but just making sure that we've got a meaning to do that. So I stumbled across B Corp, stumbled into Neon, and thus I am here. And then it kind of just transitioned really nicely as a fit to working on products that matter. And we'll go into that a little bit further as well. Natasha.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Natasha. I'm the product delivery manager here at Neon. My journey in IT started 20 odd years ago. I'm completely dating myself, but I started off more on the infrastructure engineering side of IT, and over the years I've progressed through and found myself now as a product delivery manager. The word, I guess, that the phrase B Corp is not anything that I didn't think about in its entirety until probably, I'd say 18 months ago. Is it, Jess, or a little bit longer when
Roughly.
we had yeah, I don't know.
Time is flying.
Yeah, it was definitely pre-COVID, and we had a lunch and learn, as we often do when we have more people in our office. And the idea of a B Corporation was introduced to me by Jess and another colleague of ours. But prior to that, I would say probably just starting to be more mindful and being aware of what I consume, what I consume into like actually eat, and things that I wear and everything else around me. Probably started like 10 years ago when I moved to Canada from New Zealand, and noticed the difference in the food, and then started to try and eat more organic, and then that led into fashion choices, household choices, and now I am a mother of 3 kids and really aware of plastic usage and other things. So in my life, it's something I was thinking about, but hadn't really put a label on it. And the idea of the B Corp was more intriguing to me, because we, as most of us do, you spend more time at work than you do at home. So trying to bring those things, those ideas, those values that I have at home into my workplace was really intriguing to me. And then as we've been on this journey and figuring out that there's so much opportunity, it's been really exciting. So I'm really happy to share our learnings and what we've been going through. And yeah, that's it. That's my B Corp story.
And it is funny because once you're turned on to it, it really, you notice it everywhere. You think about things differently.
Sure.
All right, who is Neon? Why are we here? So Neon is a digital product studio. We're roughly 2-ish years old, so we're newish on the block in terms of Vancouver companies. We are local to Vancouver. We do have a few remote team members as well. And again, trying to take this different position, but just a lot of folks, we're all seasoned within the technology space, but just really feeling like the world needs a redesign. What we've been doing and how we've been doing things isn't necessarily going to get us to the future that we want to be in. So how might we do that? For us, we felt like that was really in the space of digital products. How could we use our skills? So we offer strategy, design, development, growth, scale services. And so we really feel to make this difference by partnering with exceptional people. So that might be founders, organizations who may not have a team that can help support, say, bring their vision to life, or they need somebody who can help them move a little bit faster, given the internal team might be on a lot of things. So we've got a bunch of passionate folks behind the scenes that can help execute a lot of that. And we won't talk about that portion so much. We really want to focus it to being sharing our knowledge. So why are we talking about B Corp? We are on our journey as well. So we're maybe, if you're thinking about becoming a B Corp, we're actually maybe only a few steps ahead of you. We've just started our journey November of last year, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started in November, and our initial assessment was 41 points, and is it 6 months? Yeah, 6 months later, we're on 77. So we're getting there. We're not where we need to be, but we'll dig deeper into our journey and what we need to get there as well.
Yeah, so the points, you have to get a score to become a B Corp. So we'll talk about that. But just, yeah, we're currently not at the exact score that you need. So we're still working internally to make that happen. It is, we'll probably say this a lot, but it is a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. But we're excited to just share our experience, what we've learned, and we will move on. So heads up, I can't see in WOVA. We'll do this the best we can, but I think we had a previous poll of how many of the folks with us today are familiar with B corporations. Natasha, I think you have those numbers.
Yeah, we had 18 responses to our poll earlier, but if anyone is on the line and can pop into the chat, that would be great. I'm sure Leanne can share that with us.
I'll just give a couple minutes, and if not, or not even a minute.
We can carry on.
All right. And we can come back to those later. So what is the B Corp movement? Very happy my shiny gifts are working behind here. We'll start off with, some of you may be familiar, some of you may not, but Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia, would be qualified as the OG of purpose-driven businesses. They're doing a lot, but this statement really solidifies the B Corp movement. So because the world is changing, we can never assume that the way we have done things in the past is adequate for the future. What B Corp means is the way we've done business isn't necessarily the way we should continue to do business, or is the way to do business to have that long-term impact. So B Corp is a global community using business as a force for good. This can mean many different things, but at its highest level, it's across people. So that just doesn't mean your workers, but also your communities, people that your business may touch, as well as planet. So what are your environmental impacts? What are you thinking about in terms of what resources you're using or what impacts you may be having? So there's a really big notion about we really need to change things in the next decade to make sure that we have a sustainable future and we all have a great place to live in our homes. So they're working towards accelerating that global culture shift about thinking about business differently. And this doesn't necessarily mean not making a profit. B Corp really believes in to do good, you do have to make a profit. So that's why people, planet, profit. Redefining and success in business. So again, it's not just about profit. What is your impact? How are you giving back? Right now, it's really been businesses are just skyrocketing and they aren't necessarily giving back to their communities or redistributing that wealth to create economic good for the spaces that they're working in. And we really saw that with COVID as well. And just in terms of how people have been treated, how corporations have been responding. And on that relation to people, it's really about a more inclusive and sustainable economy. So a lot of the B Corp movement is kind of saying like government moves slow, businesses can move a little bit faster. So how might we actually create that more inclusive economy? How might we make sure that everyone has equal opportunity and you may not, like there's no discrimination. So it's just making sure you're thinking of those things that as a business, you may not be thinking that you could have an impact on.
Yeah, and I think that that's also one of the things is that doesn't really matter the size of your business. And we'll share, you'll see later on, like you could be a sole proprietor, or you could be a bigger business. Just laying the foundation of how you want to run your business whilst you're making money is what the B Corp movement is about.
So it is growing. We thought we would pull in some stats here. So you can see it was started in 2007 by three gentlemen. I am not the historian, but they again had that same feeling of how might we change the way that business works and operates. So at that time, you can see now there was under 500 and now we're hitting almost 4,000 and there is continuous growth year over year. So we'll put the disclaimer that you don't have to become a B Corporation. It really depends on what is a fit for your business. You could still use the principles, but it's really a mindset shift. It's thinking about business differently. And the tools and resources B Corp offers are really, you can use them as templates on how you want to build. So looking at the numbers, again, almost 4,000 companies. There are 297 Canadian B Corps, go Canada, across 150 industries, across 74 countries. So it is a global movement. It's not just particular to North America. And again, that one unifying goal, using business as a force for good. So how do we just make everything better for everyone? A few stats. So you might be thinking, okay, this is all great. This sounds good. But as a business owner, I have a lot of things I need to think about. I need to keep the lights on. So did find this stat that over $2 billion was invested in B Corps in 2019 by over 150 different VC firms. Some of those, including Andreessen Horowitz. I've blanked on the others, but we can provide those afterwards as well. 75. So this is an important stat, thinking of how competitive it is to acquire good talent. So 75% of the 2025 workforce will actually be millennials, and they want to align their personal and corporate values So if you meet some Neons, you may find that a lot of us do have these values that we want to do something with purpose, and we want to have an impact and align with our own personal values. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, and I think we can, I mean, personally, I can attest to that, because ever since we've started to think about becoming a B Corp and starting on that journey, we are a growing company. As Jess said, we're just 2 years in, and we are, as we are going through our hiring process and starting to look for individuals who think that way, bringing the B Corp language and that impact knowledge into our interview processes and just in our hiring strategies, there is actually an overwhelming amount of people who that is a really, you know, an important thing for them. It's like, oh, you guys are aware of these things. You're trying to do more than just make money. So I think there is a lot of value in creating a quality workforce in becoming a B Corp as well, because you're formalizing how you want to and the people that you want to attract.
And from a study done by Kantar Consulting called Purpose-Led Growth, they found that 175% value growth was seen by brands who were perceived to be higher impact. So this was over 12 years, so it's not necessarily startups. Think brands kind of like Nike, Toyota. They had GE in there as well. That's a rabbit hole I'll have to explore later of how they're seen as impact. But along with that, they saw that those that had medium perceived impact only saw 86%. And then 70% for those lower. So imagining also over time, seeing values shift, people becoming more aware of what brands they're supporting. These are all things that kind of help a business stand out and just really show that you're a big reason for us becoming a B Corp as well, was just to show that we were walking the walk and not just talking the talk. So it is a rigorous process. It's, again, you're changing your business practices, you're implementing policies, making sure you're adhering to those. And not a lot of companies are willing to go through that. So when you do see those that pass, having gone through the process, you know the rigor that they had to go through.
And you might think to yourself as a startup, you know, this is a lot of work. What's in it for me? Why would I want to do it? Well, these are some of the reasons. It can actually have a direct impact on your bottom line.
And I believe we had another poll or questions of how might you use your business as a force for good? So hopefully through this, you're starting to think about, okay, I might be able to do this, or maybe I could really give back to my my community. So any thoughts on how you might do that?
Yeah, some of the responses we had earlier was help people find that dream job by helping people land their dream jobs, and occasional free work. So I guess this is giving back as well. And volunteer to help educational organizations. So a lot of those responses you can see are also related to hiring and talent, but there's so many areas of opportunities once you start to look at the various things that you can do.
Awesome. And Leanne, anything in the chat?
Nothing so far, but if anyone has any comments, please be sure to post them in the chat in the Whova platform. Post your questions as they're coming up to you throughout this presentation, and we will ask it during the Q&A.
Yeah, we really want to make sure that we're able to answer and give you the most value out of this. So we highly, highly encourage, if you have questions, please drop them in. With that, we will keep going. So who can become a B Corp? Any for-profit company. So those who cannot would be government companies. If you're a brand, so if you have a parent brand and you're a brand below that, you can't certify your own, you have to be your own entity. And then not-for-profits, obviously they have different legal governance than a for-profit company as well. You do have to have a minimum of 1 year in operation. They do offer a pending status. So if you are say setting your foundation and you'll be able to become one once you hit that year, you could actually apply to start to go through that process. You don't have to. Advice that we would maybe have having going through the process is get familiar with the B impact assessment. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but use that to start to create your foundation and kind of get ahead. And then you're already doing the practices. We were thankfully doing a lot of the practices already. We just had to document it. But if you're under a year old, you kind of have that leg up of, okay, I can take this information and start to build my company in this way. And so as Natasha mentioned as well, you can be any size. So you could have 0 workers. You just need to be a sole proprietor. And then you can start to go from there. Obviously, things start to change as you have workers, you have different things that you have to abide by, but you would just adjust that each time you go to certify.
Mhm.
So there are many, as we mentioned, many B Corps already, ranging from industries, Patagonia in clothing, Ben & Jerry's in ice cream, Kickstarter in digital, change.org in petitions. This one was surprising to us, Danone. So they actually only started their journey in 2017. So they are a large corporation putting in a lot of investment to go through, and especially because they're creating a physical product. There's a lot in the supply chain to go through that. So that's pretty impressive. Lemonade Insurance, so they're a few years old now. They're in the US, so an insurance company. And then we've also thrown up some local folks as well. So Spring is a local accelerator. Many of you may be familiar with them. Isle, previously Luna Pads, female period products. They've been around. I think they were one of the first Canadian B Corps, which is a pretty proud thing as a Canadian. Fresh Prep, Smack. So as you can see, it's a variety, and by becoming one, you're essentially joining that community and hanging out with some pretty big impact folks.
My favorite one on that screen is Eminence, because I'm all about the skincare. So I love that one. They make really great products.
Yeah, and to that, once you know, like, so B Corps, usually when they have a physical product, they'll have a B logo on it. So now I eat Prana nuts, they're a B corporation. It just kind of makes like, okay, I know they had to go through some rigor to get here. Like, I would rather support them over a generic nut brand, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, why Neon? We mentioned this a little bit, but so we say we want to build with purpose. We're committed to creating with those who share our values. We really wanted to make sure that it wasn't just, say, Natasha and I, we are the internal B Corp champions, but we didn't just want it to be us who had that lens. We wanted to make sure that our whole team had that lens and that we'd be able to identify impact across our own work. So it is about your own processes, what you do, but also how you work with your customers. We call our customers partners because we're working together, but just making sure that our whole team, regardless of if you're working with a developer, product manager, designer, they have the ability to help identify an opportunity for making an impact across a business.
Yeah, so that you just have that lens. And one of the things you might be asking is if we're, one of the things we learned as well along the way is being a B Corp, it has in its essence very little to do with what you're actually producing. So we do digital products. It's not anything physical that we can stick our label on, for example, but it's more about your processes, your values, your employers, how you show up in your community, how you engage with the environment, or considerations you make about the environment throughout your process. And we'll dig deeper into those. But yeah, for us, even as a digital company, the opportunities there. And we mentioned before, an insurance company and data doesn't physically produce anything, and if anything, other people are doing it, right? So it's anybody can do it. Yeah,
and we're excited when we come across other digital companies, because it was a little tricky for our own mindsets to think about, okay, well, I don't have a physical product, I don't have a supply chain, how can I do that? But there are ways, and you will learn them throughout the process for sure. Does anyone have any B Corps that they currently support? Any favorite brands?
Yeah, I didn't have any. Oh, actually, no, there is a response on there. Oh no, that was me testing. I was responding to my own question.
All good. Yeah. We will be timely and open up for more Q&A, then we'll move through this one. All right, benefits of becoming a B Corp.
Yeah. So as we said earlier, you have access to a global and local community as well. And especially now with COVID, we all understand now that we don't have to physically meet in person to network and to share knowledge. So there's a lot of online networking opportunities within the B Corp community. And we, as we said, we are still status pending, like we're still to put into our application, but already we've had opportunities to join meetups, to network with other people who already are B Corps, or those that are thinking about it. There is actually a really good local network called B Local Vancouver, and they have regular meetup sessions where there's a monthly breakfast one. There's different ones on different topics. So HR related, maybe diversity and inclusion related ones. We had a business development one related one a couple of weeks ago. So there's different things and different meetups that are friendly to our time here in BC, and also mindful of everybody's busy and has time. So they're kind of short, effective, and they're just great opportunity to bring different ideas to the table. The other reason to become a B Corp as well is just to increase your credibility and trust, especially as well, like looking at startups as well. You're just starting up, you're a team of 1 or 5 or 10. You know, nobody really knows what you're doing. Nobody knows who you are. And being part of this community actually just instantly amplifies your credibility, and people trust you because knowing that the process that you have gone through to be able to say that you're a B Corp makes you stand out.
Yeah, it's third party. So it's not like we could just slap on organic label like many may do, or Amazon friendly, like just making sure that it is actually a third party accredited certification. So you've gone through that rigor.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's that protection for the long term. So this really starts out as part of the process. And here in BC, you'd have to make a legal change to your framework, and we've recently changed our process to become our governance to become a benefit company. So there are legal requirements that you need to do, and making that legal change is also protection for the long term, because once, you know, legal things are hard to undo, and once they're set in stone, they're there. And that means that also gives confidence in your partners, in your employees, and everybody else that you are serious about what you're doing, and this is for the long term. So you're in it for the long haul. And also being a benefit company as well, you are publicly acknowledging that you're going to do more for social and environmental areas, and you're not only just interested in your bottom line and in money.
I was reading a great example about this with Amazon acquiring Whole Foods. So obviously Whole Foods had a different model, but because they weren't legally protected of their model, they kind of started to fall in what Amazon may do as business practices. So for example, if Whole Foods would have been a B Corporation when Amazon acquired them, they would have legally been required to maintain that structure. There are cases of businesses removing their B Corp structure. It's another conversation, but essentially they made it, you had a requirement to make those legal changes, and companies like Etsy, Honest Company, and Warby Parker actually forfeited that. And that may have been due to, again, maybe wanting to make more money quickly in the short term. But the whole premise of being a B Corp is, how do I have a long lasting impact? How do I make sure that my business is going to last for a long time? It's not just in it for quick returns in the short term.
You're kind of protecting your legacy, right?
Yes.
And as we mentioned earlier, is attracting and engaging employees, you know, people, millennials in particular, wanting to align your personal values with your corporate values. And again, my thinking, I always go back to, I spend so much time of my waking time at work, and just having that opportunity that my personal values and my contribution is aligned to my personal values is important to me, and it's important to a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, we've seen great examples internally of even selecting our toolkit for design and development. We've actually found a platform, I believe it's called Chakra, that is a Nigerian company. So we're more likely to choose to support a business like that, and just make sure that we're differentiating in who we're supporting, and it's not just, say, the Silicon Valley folks products, but making sure that we're making meaningful decisions. Because once you realize, you think, oh, I usually just use products because they're there, it does add a little bit of rigor of thinking about it. But when there is this sense of feeling good, like when you know that you're just supporting somebody who may not have had certain advantages, and you're giving them that leg up.
Exactly.
So based on what we've been sharing, do any benefits for your business come to mind? So how might becoming a B Corp benefit your own business? Have you had troubles with talent? Is that something that could help you differentiate?
And even just trying to push certain things ahead within your company that are not necessarily related to your output, but implementing something new in the recycling department, or convincing people to use less power, things like that. There's just so many opportunities for change that maybe there's something that you're at home, you're a little bit more autonomous, you can change things around your own your own household, but doing something like that at work, I think if you're a B Corp and you have that kind of buy-in from everybody else, you can affect changes in so many other areas, besides just what you're officially hired to do.
Yeah, and you look into kind of those nooks and crannies and don't realize like, oh, actually this saved us a lot of money because we were maybe just not thinking about things as much. And now that we've changed how much power we use, or we're unplugging things, like those small impacts really do add up.
That is true.
All right, how to become a B Corp?
So the key thing is getting stakeholder buy-in, if you're not a sole proprietor, that is. And that to us, I think, is a key, because it's a heavy lift. As we said, there's a lot of work to be done. It's not an easy thing to just say we're going to do this thing and then we're done. You have to keep recertifying. So once you've laid the foundation, you have to keep the momentum going. As we mentioned earlier, there is 80 points is the minimum that you need to certify. But the ceiling is 210. I think companies like Patagonia are in their 200s. So as we said, they're the OG and the gold standard of something like being a B Corp corporation. But in order to make those changes and to keep them going and to have a lens that looks for different opportunities in different ways, you need buy-in from everyone. You need buy-in from your executive, you need buy-in from your middle management, you need buy-in from everybody, you need buy-in from the admin person. Because if everybody's contributing to it, then it's more impactful in the end.
And to add to that is it doesn't need to come just from the top either. If you are not the founder, if you're not the sole proprietor, our journey started because we started, okay, we want to do this. Let's present it to the board. Let's get information together. Let's share why. So if you feel strongly about it, and maybe you survey a few of your coworkers, and if some of them feel strongly about it too, it is a movement, it's a motion. So you can start to test that, and your employer might not be on board, or your team might not be on board, but show data, show stats, show benefits. And if it's ultimately not the right place, there are many other B Corps or places out there as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And completing the impact assessment. So this is the impact assessment that is used by B Corp to either grant or deny the certification. And this is the benchmark that you said at the beginning, and this is what you're constantly trying to approve. So what we did just before we even started looking at different areas was completing that assessment, because it really makes you look at all those different areas of your organization and highlights areas of improvements and sees what you can do. So that's a good way to start to see where we're at. And as I mentioned earlier, we started at 41.
And that tool is free as well. So you can get started without paying any fees.
Anybody can do it. Yes, yeah, it's a free tool. There's also the legal and transparency requirements that we mentioned the legal ones before, and the transparency one is more really just about being transparent to the public. So there is a impact report that you can publish every year that's making sure that certain metrics and KPIs are available to anyone who asks, to be honest. So it's kind of a way of like, you're not hiding everything. Everything is out in the open.
And that legal one can feel a little overbearing. Like, I need to change my legal documentation. You can review. So on bcorporation.net, you can view the legal requirements, but really what it is changing your articles and indicating that you are considering other stakeholders, or you're considering beyond your shareholders. So you're considering, again, people, the environment, your workers, the community, and any business decisions, and you're not making decisions that will negatively harm them, as mentioned. So those companies that I mentioned earlier, Etsy, Honest Company, and Warby Parker, they were all B Corps for 5 years, but then B Corp decided to change to make the legal change a requirement, and they stuck to it. They weren't like, oh, they're leaving us, let's change our rules so that they'll stay. But it's this thing that they believe in, that to really have that impact and that change and to make business better, you do need to commit to those things.
Right. And also just another call out on our learnings as well is that being a legal requirement, it does take time. So it's something to start doing earlier on. And we also learned that the legal requirement, the legal change in BC requires you sending something through the post. So it's not electronic. It does take time, and it has to be paper and pen. So yeah, that's something as well to look at earlier on. Mentioned preparing your documentation. What we decided to do was just create policies for all the different areas. And as Jess mentioned, there were things that we were already doing, but weren't formalized. They weren't down in policies. And then they're formally written. It kind of also then puts them down. We can share them with the rest of the team. We've had team members go through now what we call our neon guiding lights, and signed them so that we're all acknowledging that as a team, we're going to strive to do these things. There's things in the assessment that we didn't really think needed to be put down in writing, but when you think in the model of being inclusive and making sure you're considering everyone, then they do. One of the things that we found surprising, because there's a few females here and we are female-led, was a breastfeeding policy. And we were like, but isn't it obvious that, if someone needs to feed their baby, they just do it? But we can put it in a policy, and it gives you an advantage. So there's just so many different things and so many opportunities for change, and even just thinking about it, because to dig into that example, like you might think, oh, it's a given to do this, but if you don't actually have anything set up to do it, and you're not mindful about the approach, then it's a question of are you really doing it, or is it really an option? So this is
it's the accountability of it, and that documentation is key, because when you do submit your impact assessment and your answers, B Lab will ask at random which questions they'd like documentation for. But it's also, the accountability. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of work and the day-to-day, but once you've kind of taken the time to create that, you do remember it, and it starts to become a part of your DNA, and it's just almost second nature the more you go through it. Anything you do that is new at the beginning can feel overwhelming for sure.
Yeah. And then the final step would be just submitting to B Lab for review. Once you're in a bit of advice here, I can't remember if we discussed this later on, but just 80 is the minimum, but they say that 60% of people who submit don't actually make it through. So it's always good to have a buffer, have more points, so put in more work, knowing that there's some things that maybe you haven't quite reached the commitment level that you think you're at.
Yeah, so us being at a 77, we're quite close to 80, but we want to make sure that we're going to get through it. So we've worked with a partner, and they've assured us we'd be good at 80, but we want to push ourselves to 83 to 85, just so that we know that we'll make it through. We've put a lot of work into it. So making sure that, especially for the team as well, that we get there. But it's not just about the points, it's about the mission as well.
Exactly. So completing your B impact assessment is based on your community, the environment, workers, customers, and government. Sorry.
It's Friday.
Exactly. And just to dig deeper into those different areas, so you're aware of what it is you're being assessed about. So community is just how you show up in your communities, your stakeholders, how you choose your suppliers, your distributors, if you have a physical product. And even if you don't, for us, like as a digital company, it's looking at our digital suppliers. Where do we get our libraries for the developers, and what do we use as design tools? And then as well, being in a physical office, it's decisions around, where are we going to get milk from? Where's our coffee going to come from? And our paper and things like that. So what you're doing within the community, how diverse your engagement with your community is as well. Creating jobs, your volunteering, how you give, back to the community. All those different things are, there is measurement. And one thing to say as well about the assessment is it's kind of twofold. One is, what are you going to commit to do? What do you think you should do about this? And you make a policy, say, okay, we're going to do this thing. And the second layer of it, which is ongoing, is actually doing the thing. So you can say, we're going to donate 1% of our profit to charity. And then it's like, okay, that's great. You said you're going to do it. But then the next day as well, did you do it? And then it's kind of going back to some of the questions will be, in the last 12 months, what did you actually do? The intent is great, but what was the actual impact? What did you end up doing?
Yeah, so when you submit, when you complete your B impact assessment, everything you fill out is based on the 12 months prior to that as well.
Yeah. So we have community, we have the environment. So these are direct and indirect impacts. And for us as well, being a digital company and everybody working from home, these things are a little bit, trickier to measure. We don't have tangible goods, and we, digital stuff is a lot trickier to measure as well. But there's different opportunities depending on your business model and what you do, to look at different areas of improvement, like, for example, assessing your GHG, greenhouse gas usage, and your electricity usage, and then even offsetting whatever you use month over month as well.
Yeah, so because we're so small and we don't actually have physical products, a good option for us might be to offset our power usage. We're still working through the exact details of what that looks like. And as we mentioned, it's a learning experience along the way. And that's what that advantage of, if you go through the process of understanding the impact assessment first, and then knowing what you're accounted on. And we mentioned this later, but also having help. So we had a partner that supported us through this journey, and it definitely made it much more digestible.
It did. It just demystified the process. Workers as well. So how you treat your employees, your compensation, the benefits, the training that you make available, the amount of ownership that you allow your workers to have as well. Like, are they allowed to have a voice? Do they feel like they have a voice? And just your work environment as well.
Is there profit sharing? So again, it's all about, even if you think of like a physical good, it can't be cyclical. What can you do? So if the business is making money, how do we support the workers make money? How do we give it back to the economy? It's kind of like this cycle of giving, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. And then customers as well. So being selective about your customers is an important part of it as well. So whether you're serving underserved populations, for us, it's more around maybe the choices that we make when we partner, when we call them partners, but as we engage new customers, are we tending to look for businesses that are women-owned, businesses that are owned by people from underrepresented groups, impactful business. So we're working with businesses that does recycling or somewhere in the health space. The UN SDGs are a great reference for that as well, for helping disseminate which areas that you're going to create your biggest impact, at least the choices behind it.
It says it says business model there, and it really depends on the type of business that you have. So if you're services, if you have physical goods, if you're in agriculture, if you have physical goods and services, the questions are kind of tailored. It's like it's gated based on how you answer it. So what we're doing might not apply to your business if you're in a different field.
It's whatever makes sense for your business, right? So some of the things that we've even kind of gone back and forth with, and it was that environment one of them, is I think it's important as well when you look at this to only not think about the points and getting over the line so you get the stamp and you get the certification. It's also being mindful of does this make sense for us as an organization, even though it might look like an easy win. Is it worth doing? Is it going to have the right impact? And if it's not, there's many other areas and many other things that you might do. They might take you longer to get there, but an important part of it is making sure that you're making the right decision for you as well. And for us being a younger company as well, there's certain things that we could do, but they're just costing too much money for us right now because we're still growing. We still have to keep the lights on, as Jess said earlier. So being mindful of those decisions as well, because we anyone in business is still there to make money, right? So and you also still need to convince your stakeholders that this is the right financial decision in everything that you're doing. And yeah, governance is something that we spoke about as well. So one of the things you'll need to revisit as well is your mission statement, so that you're publicly declaring that you are here to be in business for good, and that you are taking into consideration more than just your key stakeholders and your bottom line. We spoke about governments, I keep saying governance structure, controls, and that transparency is a big part of it as well. So being publicly transparent about how you're running your business and how you're engaging with your stakeholders.
And on that, so by becoming a B Corp, you do have to share your score that will go up on bcorporation.net. Not what, like, it doesn't give your answers, but it just overall, what was your score? By becoming a benefit company, you are legally required to do reporting yearly. So that would be, you can use the impact assessment structure that we've just gone through as your reporting guide. How did we do for customers, community, the environment? Transparency also relates to internal. So we share our financials with our team. That's important as well, in terms of how you're treating your workers and how you're running your business. So things like that count too.
Right, and we touched on this before a little bit earlier, but just some of the reasons for not getting through certification on the first try. And we said 60% of businesses who do that initial submission don't actually make it the first time. So just some of them is choosing the wrong impact model or track right at the beginning, because that has an influence on subsequent questions. As we said, like a big manufacturing company or even a small manufacturing company will have different requirements or different asks as opposed to a digital company. Not understanding your legal requirement and not meeting it. Unprepared documentation. The documentation is, in our experience, the biggest lift. It's because you need to put more thought into it. You do need to get buy-in from other people, because you can't just write things up and say this is what we're doing.
Unless you're sole proprietor, then that makes it a little easier.
That is true, yeah. Unless you're a sole proprietor, but I think even as a sole proprietor, you probably have people that you consult as well, right? So they might not. You could still veto what they say, but I think this makes you really be more mindful and think about whether this is sustainable and the best decision for your business. Again, having a B champion, as you call them, or champions within the organization to do this. We don't, again, startups here, small businesses, you don't have the luxury of having one person. It's like, okay, you're a B Corp person, this is your job, you're going to do this 24/7. And even if they did, that's not the intent of the whole process, right? You don't want just one person telling everyone what to do and making sole decisions. So having a champion or a few champions in the organization to help lead the process, not necessarily to do the work, but to be the person who does the prompt, who facilitates decisions, goals, helps everyone just, be mindful of what we're doing in those areas. And then also another thing that they've mentioned to us as well when we've gone for kind of webinars for this is just being unresponsive when the B Lab come during the review process, when they come to you with elaboration, or when they ask you certain things that can have an impact on your assessment as well, your certification.
Yeah, and so you do need to resubmit every 3 years. So it's not a yearly heavy lift, but the goal is to just make sure that you're being mindful of that once you've got it and gone through. We don't have this in a slide, but there is a fee. So it's a percentage of your revenue. I don't have it specifically memorized, but we can share that resource, or you can find it at bcorporation.net, but it is based on how much revenue you make. It would be a percentage of that, of what your fee is to be certified for those 3 years.
So I guess in that line, doing it earlier is better, right? At least for the first time.
Oh, sorry, I moved without you looking.
That's okay. So we're just going to go into our learnings, and we've been mentioning them along the way. We've been talking about them, but we're jumping into them a little bit more. So keep it cool, right? Don't panic. It seems overwhelming at first when you do look at it, but it is worth the effort, we believe, and it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's not a quick thing. It's a journey, and anything that's worth having takes time.
And get a mentor.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. If you can, get a mentor. We engaged Decade Impact, who are based here in Vancouver, and we did some workshops with them for our entire team. And then they helped us through just getting the documentation done and everything else. And it is, get a mentor if you can, get someone who can help you, even if it's another, I mean, the directory of who is a B Corp is available and free, and you might be able to identify someone in your industry, someone you can reach out to just get some advice. But definitely, I think it's important to have a mentor.
Yeah, bcorporation.net does have some really good documentation, but again, if you have the means to be able to outsource that a little bit and get that help, then you can focus on continuing to grow your business. And now I would say, now that we have the template that we've gone through, it would be easier for us each year, but we might actually continue to use that support so that our team can focus on delivering amazing products and building a better future.
Into the world. Right. I think we've pretty much covered most of this, but using the BIA initially to set your foundation to know where you're at is really important. Thinking really about what matters for your business, what's going to be more impactful and actually matter to everyone, to your stakeholders, to your customers, to your employees. That's really important as well. Understanding the potential financial resources as well that are needed. Being open-minded and just planning for the long term, because this isn't just something you do once and then you move on. This is something you want to be part of your DNA. You want it to be in every facet of your organization. So be open-minded, take your time and make sure that you're doing the right thing for everyone. And another thing as well is people are on different stages of this, of that B Corp journey, if you like, and you want everyone to get to that moment where they get it. They're like, okay, this is why we're doing it, because it's a little bit mysterious at the beginning. You have the people who've introduced the idea perhaps, or people who are the champions feel strongly about it and they understand what's going on, but not everybody does at the beginning. So yeah, just keep going until everybody gets there, and they do get there.
Yeah. A big one we had with that aha moment, or even just shifting our thinking. So for us as a services business, our limiting belief, you could say, was, well, we're at the mercy of our partners, of who we work with. We can only do what business they're in. And the reframe would be, well, how might we be such a good leader and good partner that we help them see the impact that they could make, and we put ourselves in the position of power versus at the mercy of. So even just small tweaks like that, you can just feel the energy shift, and you can feel, okay, how do I move forward with this as a business, with this mindset, and work with people, again, going further together is what we're doing. And most importantly, it is a journey. It's not a destination. So even once you become certified, there is still that journey of continuing to grow your score. So say, even if you just hit that 83, Natasha and I, as we go through the impact assessment, finalizing, we're like, oh, this would be a good one for us to work on next after we've kind of conquered these spaces. So you kind of can start to build your impact roadmap, say, from the assessment, and start to understand, okay, we can work towards these and we can increase our score. So every year you can do it. And again, using that impact assessment, if you don't have the means or resources to go through this journey yet, just take the free assessment, start to understand what it means, and you can start to do and put those principles into your business, and just think about, how are you, again, committing to the long term versus just hitting short-term gains.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
All right. We've saved some space for questions. Leanne, do we have any in the chat?
We have a few. So a few you ended up answering, so I was marking them as tagged as we went. But given that you've gone through the process, can you give us a concrete or flexible period of time of how long it takes to gather and prepare all of that documentation that you need to actually fill that envelope and send in and apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we started in November. So at that point, Decade supported us to go through an initial pass of the impact assessment. We wrapped up getting our policies done in April, I want to say. End of March, April.
Yeah, March, yeah.
So that was our heavy lift in terms of getting all that documentation, wrangling. We're probably low staffed for the amount of effort that we have. So it did take a little bit more time. So if you do have that space, Will mentioned a lot of that heavy lifting for the policy documentation was on the HR side. So if you do have somebody and if they're fully loaded, be mindful that that might slow you down a little bit. But yeah, roughly depends on where you're at and what resources you have to put towards it. But so yeah, roughly we've been from November to April of this year. We still have small few pieces. So I would maybe give yourself a year. Once you submit.
I think a year is good because there are certain things that you're being measured. What have you done in the last 12 months? So for example, when you look at your revenue or something that's really good, and I think because we already had it in the process, was profit sharing. So that's not something I think that you're just going to put together quickly, right? You have to be mindful about how you're doing it and get the right buy-in and make sure you're making the right decision for different areas. And because some of the training, for example, like we look at something like EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion training, was something we initially thought, oh, we could do this real quick. But then we started to look like everybody's busy. You know, it's taking people out of their time out of their day again to do this thing. So we're also mindful of making this become a burden for everyone. We want everyone to come at the right time and you know, be more mindful about it. So I think I appreciate what you're saying with your question, but I think just being focused on that timeline too much could be limiting in itself. I would say 6 to 12 months is probably a good barometer for that.
Yeah. And then once you do submit, so there is, I believe there's a backlog. So once you submit, B Lab will review it. That backlog right now, I believe, is 6 months. There is an influx of people, likely hunch, maybe it's related to COVID and people being like, how can we do business better? How can we show up for the world in a better way? So do be mindful of that gap as well. What we have learned is once you do fully submit, so we haven't officially submitted yet. We're still working on gathering our last few points. But once you submit, there is a small window where if you really know that you're going to be able to commit to something, you can still kind of make those changes before B Lab will lock it and then review it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have known all of this if we didn't have help, for sure.
Definitely. So it sounds like one of the biggest points is start thinking about it, start gathering everything because it's going to take some time, and really leverage that support system that you have.